Hi everyone. Hope you're doing well. I've been having a really hard time recording this. Okay, let me stop myself there. I'm still getting the hang of this. Hi everyone. My name is Monica. I am a community taught visual artist in Chicago, and I've been making art for social change for over 10 years. A small part of why I'm making these vlogs is to create a digital archive of my art practice, but I'm also making these vlogs to share what I've learned about making art for social change from my own lived experiences in the hopes of helping artists who need help getting started or who are looking for just some extra support and guidance. Okay, hope you have your water. Hi everybody, stay hydrated. I had this idea that I would record and release a vlog every second Sunday of the month. And so I'm trying not to be hard on myself because it's now the end of April, but I'm also trying to practice compassion with myself. I made these rules. Nobody is sitting here waiting for this vlog to come out on the second Sunday of the month, especially when I didn't even tell anybody that would be the cadence of releasing these videos. I'm practicing ditching perfectionism. And that's going to be a huge part of our conversation today because I'm going to be talking about how you could start making art for social change. Before we get into it, I want to do a quick recap on what I've been up to since the last video. Alright, so remember those relief prints I made at Lil Street Art Center from my last video? I was limited on printing time after that class ended, so I only got to take 15 home. A couple of prints stayed with me, one went to my parents, and one went to a silent auction for Crossroads Fund's annual fundraiser. Crossroads Fund supports community organizations working on issues of racial, social, and economic justice in the Chicago area. They pull resources from individuals and foundations and businesses to support grassroots movements for social change. I shipped the rest of the prints off to the Just Seeds online store, where they ended up selling out within 24 hours of posting them, so I'm definitely planning on printing more this summer. I also wanted to support the Trans Justice Funding Project's spring fundraising campaign, so I sent some small relief postcard prints to anybody who donated to them in April. Trans Justice Funding Project is a trans community-led funding initiative supporting grassroots trans-led organizations across the U.S. with unrestricted, no-strings-attached grants. Instead of directly accepting the money myself for this fundraiser, I instructed people on an Instagram post to donate directly on the organization's donation page, and then I asked them to send me a screenshot of their confirmation page. So in total, I mailed out over 120 prints and raised over $1,100. Nice work, y'all. And those were actually two great examples of how you could create and use your artwork to support efforts for social change. I also got myself some drawing support. I didn't want to keep hunching over and wrecking my back during super long stretches of drawing. So this thing has a sort of beanbag bottom that lets me be flexible with what angle I want it at. And it also has an attachable arm that I can put my iPad on to draw at eye level. But I'm going to stop there because this is not an ad and I am not sponsored. But I just wanted to share this pro tip with you. So just search beanbag iPad support and you should be able to find one. And I did create 2 new digital illustrations using it, and I'm pretty happy with how they turned out. I also made some time to source some creative inspiration with my partner in various iconic places in Chicago, including getting some much needed humidity and greenery at the Garfield Park Conservatory, which is one of our favorite spots to visit, especially when the winter here in Chicago just will not quit. We also visited Rotofuki, which is a really fun designer toy store and gallery located on the border of the Lincoln Park and Lakeview neighborhoods. It's in this gorgeous vintage building, and we just love stopping here for a quick little joy fix, and our inner childs thank us every time. Also, this store and gallery is a trans-owned business. Show up and support them. Speaking of my partner, I'm super proud of them because they just wrapped up a full year of putting their graphic design skills towards supporting the opening of the National Public Housing Museum, which is the first cultural institution in the country dedicated to telling the stories of public housing residents. Through oral histories, artifacts, art, music, the museum sparks conversations around housing insecurity and housing as a human right. Opening weekend was incredible, but if you missed it, visit nphm.org for museum hours and definitely check it out. Can you see why I've been finding it hard to record and edit the second vlog? Literally all of this has happened in the past month. And so lastly, I got to spend some time in one of my favorite neighborhoods at one of my favorite bookstores in conversation with some of my favorite artists.
Where are we, Monica?
We're about to go to the Pilsen Community Books to talk with Amos Paul Kennedy Jr. and Nwosu. It's a beautiful day in Chicago. It's like the first 75-degree weather day, so
This year.
yeah, this year. It's exciting. That's right. I might not have sounded super excited right there because I was so nervous, but I got to be in conversation with the legendary Detroit printer, Amos Paul Kennedy Jr., who was visiting Chicago to celebrate the release of his new monograph, Citizen Printer. I was honored to be asked to moderate this conversation with him about his book and making art for social change, and I got to invite the wonderful queer Chicago-based illustrator Nwosu to join us. The conversation took place at Pilsen Community Books, Chicago's only employee-owned and operated independent bookstore. Definitely check it out if you are inspired by supporting spaces that have unapologetically radical politics. But shout out to Roxana and Bill from Under the Tree podcast for making all of this happen. I'll definitely share some gems from this talk at the end of the video because I also asked Amos and Chi about their advice on how someone can start making art for social change. So let's talk about making art for social change and how do you even start? Everybody has the capacity to make art. You know, I even believe that organizers are artists because to organize is an art form. You have to be creative, you have to be scrappy. Anyways, systematic oppression tells us differently all the time that you have to go to art school or that you have to be technically trained in order to make art. And I think that's wrong. The way that we challenge this is by horizontally nurturing everybody's skills. I don't identify as a self-taught artist. I actually identify as a community-taught artist because so many of my friends have just shared their wisdom and knowledge about movement art making. I really want to say prioritizing community self-determination is so important. As a movement artist, I believe that we create art to build the power of the community up. We are ready and willing to be accountable in our art making. We challenge our own biases when we're making art. We take feedback on our work without ego. Acknowledging when you've messed up. When you mess up, it sucks. And the reality is that it's impact versus intention. There's several questions to ask yourself before you commit to making art for an organization or just in alignment with movement. Number one is around skills. Do I have the technical skills to complete this work? Are you a watercolor painter, but someone's asking you to make an animation for their organization? Do you have the skills to do that? I know it sounds like a really cool opportunity to dive into, but if you don't have the skills, you're not only going to potentially be disappointed by what you end up making, but you might be wasting the organization's time. Number two is interest. Do I want to? Does it align with my values? You want to do things that are in alignment with your values and something that you care deeply about because it's going to be that much more impactful. Do I have time to complete this by the deadline that the organization might have for a rally that they're having if you're making a poster for a march or an action? Do you have the time to actually get the poster to them on time? Not only in time for the march, and this is me learning from past mistakes, but in time for them to have enough time to review it with the organizational team members and then for them to send it to print and then receive it back from the printers. You have to make sure to think about that time frame. But I actually want to turn it over, speaking of how we all learn with each other, to a couple of friends that I asked this question to, people that I am learning from on the regular and who I have deep respect for, who really model what it means to live and navigate this world with solid values and with compassion and care. So I'm going to pass it over to William Estrada. William is an educator, an activist, cultural worker. Here's what William had to say.
My name is William Estrada, and I'm a community artist focusing on supporting grassroots movements led by people. So one of the things that I would say is, first take an inventory, right, of the skills that you have, the things that you're interested in. The second thing that I would say is look at who is already doing that work. Who's doing that work in your neighborhood, nationally, globally? The third thing that I would say is reach out to folks that are doing that organizing in your community. When you start these relationships, go in as a learner, as a student, and think about the collaborative process and the ways that you feel the most comfortable collaborating. What does your time look like? Because I think a lot of this work is really slow, and also trying to figure out, right, what are the ways that you as an artist can connect to the work that's already happening, so it doesn't feel forced, and so you're also supporting work that's already happening in the communities that you're interested in working in. And then the fourth thing that I would say is, it's always a learning process, right? Like, and it's a feedback loop. So as you're thinking about it, talk to other artists and reflect, right? What were the things that were helpful? What were the things that were not? I think communication and reflection are a big part of this work. And it's not about getting it perfect every single time, because I don't think that there is such a thing as perfection, but there's always a way of, trying to minimize the harm that we can cause. And also trying to make sure that the things that you're interested in doing, that they're in alignment with the cultural workers, right, that you're working with. Because I think sometimes, even though, there's a lot of work happening, sometimes that alignment isn't happening. We can actually create more harm than being helpful. So I think through that process, right, of really finding folks that you can vibe with, I think that's like a big part. And then once you do that, you start all over again, and every time do the work just a little bit better. Surround yourself by artists that you admire that are doing this work, artists that will love you unconditionally, but also be critical of the work, so we can grow as artists and as community members.
I also had the opportunity to talk to my friend, Olly Costello. They are another incredible artist and illustrator. I have known Olly for definitely over a decade, and someone that I look to for guidance on movement art making so regularly. So Olly came by the other day and we talked about what they would tell someone. So here's what Olly has to say.
I think what I want to offer is that the gate is wide, which can feel both inviting and a bit overwhelming. So some tips that I've learned from my friends and my teachers over the past several years includes finding just 3 topic areas or movement areas that you feel connected to or are present in your community. Find the people that are already organizing around those topics. Learn as much as you can from them, which could include reading through their social media content, maybe listening to interviews. You can illustrate quotes from interviews. Maybe there are books that you can pick up that will deepen your educational journey. Make art about what you're learning. That can be a really inviting and accessible way to invite your audience and your community to learn with you. If there are events in your neighborhood or your city around these topics, show up to them and introduce yourself. Build those relationships and build that trust. Finding other artists to collaborate with can be a really great opportunity to merge your imaginations, and that is fun because then new ideas arise that you might not have come up with on your own, and it can be an opportunity to talk through some of the things that you're unsure about. It's important to stay humble and stay adaptable and open to feedback. This is definitely always going to be a growth and learning opportunity for us. And I think I'll close with a reminder I try to hold for myself, which is that the more that we practice our creative skills, the greater our confidence becomes in our ability to meet community needs if they ask, and the greater our capacity to imagine different worlds. So definitely keep practicing and keep making, and good luck.
I have one more thought that I want to share. Just like in design, movement art is also about communication. You're communicating the demands of a better world, the demands of a community, and their vision for a better world. When you're actually making your piece, it's really important to create a focal point. It's your duty as the artist to tell the viewer what the most important part of your art is. You can do that through literally making your message the biggest part of the poster, or through certain colors, contrast, scale. My partner is a graphic designer, and they're always teaching me that design is actually about making information accessible and communicating a message. So Just like in design, movement art is also about communicating a message. A lot of movement artists make really elaborate, beautiful pieces, and those are necessary and so valuable. But if you're making art for a community protest or a rally or an action, you want your poster to be seen across the street. You want that message to be crystal clear in that poster. No more than 5-6 words max on a poster. Honestly, but like five, depending on how big, Anyways, I need to sit in the chair though. Oh my God. Ugh. Can you see me? No, you can't see me. If you're drawing people in your art, pay attention to the dynamics of people's interactions, and also pay attention to things like race, gender, body size, abilities. If you are making this work in collaboration with an organization or with community, really defer to and get input on the type of people that they want to see in the piece. They might want to see real people or real members and will give you photographs to reference, or they might want you to just like make up people. If you are including someone in a wheelchair, for example, but everybody else is not in a wheelchair, making sure that person in a wheelchair isn't like off to the side in the poster by themselves and then everybody else is like on the other side of the poster. Because of internalized ableism, fat phobia, anti-Blackness, those are kind of the interactions I'm talking about. You want to produce something that is both visually stimulating, but it also has to communicate information to people. It's really a lot better to use a darker font on a lighter background. There's this color contrast checker online that I use at work and also in my own personal work. I double check for meeting accessibility standards. And so you can like enter hex codes for like a background and a foreground, and it'll tell you if it passes or if it fails visual accessibility guidelines. And I'll link it in the descriptions for you if you want to check it out.
One question that I'm always getting all the time is, how do you start making art for social change? Which is a really hard question to answer because you kind of just do it, right? But I would love to hear how you started to make art for social change, and what advice would you give to someone who wants to know how to start?
It is very much do it. Yeah, for me, it definitely was becoming radicalized over a number of years and just lots of little moments. And, as an artist, as someone who just creates, I've always created something. It started showing up in the things that I was doing because it was what was most forefront in the conversations I was having. It was what I was seeing on my blog. It lives inside, right? The things you have to say live inside of you. And so my encouragement for other people who really want, I think the conversations we were having earlier about, do you call yourself an artist? Do you not? Or is everyone an artist? I believe everyone is an artist. Use a label or don't use a label. But to exist is to be a creative. To survive is to be creative. Mm-hmm. And so if you are surviving in these conditions, you are experiencing something inside of your body that you might not have the words to say it, but people have music to it. People just have rage about it, right? You have tears about it. That is art, to capture it in some way, shape, or form. And it doesn't have to be comprehensible for anyone but yourself. We all have, I believe this, I hope this is true, that we all have that shared experience of something is not right. Something does not sit right with me. What can you do with that feeling? And that is really to just create. And call yourself an artist or don't call yourself an artist. Just create.
I like to tell a story about when I was a young man. I was young once. This was in the late 60s, early 70s, and my father was in his 50s, and we used to get into some heated arguments about changing the world and everything. And one Saturday morning, we got into a little discussion, and he said, and I told him, my generation is going to change the world. I'm going to change the world. We're going to make it better. We're going to do all this. And he said, you want to change the world? I said, yeah, I'm going to change the world. So you want to change the world? I said, yes. And he looked at me and said, go cut the grass. And I was pissed, and I cut the grass and mumbled under my breath. And about 30 years later, I realized that I did change the world. I cut the grass. The world is not the same. But we live, again, in a civilization where it has to be something great, grand, bold, It has to be the act. The very thought that you want to say, do something for social justice, changes the world and puts you on that trajectory of doing it. You may not get there that day, but you've started. So it's just that growth. By the virtue of the fact that you came here tonight, puts you on that trajectory. It reinforces your belief. It lets you know that you are not alone, that there are other people like you, that I do have a community, a tribe.
I'm going to end us on a quote actually from your book, speaking to what
Okay.
you were just talking about. You said, "Some folks have told me that my story has changed their lives, that my decision to leave a life as a business bureaucrat in favor of one as a letterpress printer gave them permission to leave the path they happened to be traveling for the path that they truly wanted to travel. I must go forth," they said. "I feel it is my duty to continue to make these cracks in our inhumane society so that others will have space to live their lives. And the spaces that they make will expand the cracks for others, just as the space I make expands the cracks made by my ancestors. One day, our growth will rumble down the walls that separate our humanity. I try to print a world into existence that is as welcoming and nurturing as the universe is to me, and I urge others to agitate, agitate, agitate for a world that is welcoming and nurturing to them. I print for the glory of my peoples."
Beautiful.
Okay. Thank you all so much.
I want to echo what Amos said. The thought of the act is the starting point, and it puts you on the trajectory towards change. Having that thought that you're going to try is critical and is so needed, and we need everybody to at least have the thought, because then that thought puts you on that path towards actually taking tangible steps towards contributing to like building a better world. Tell me in the comments if you have the thought about making art for social change, because if you're watching this video, you're already thinking about it and you're already on the path towards taking action, towards collective liberation. Okay, till next time, bye. All right, just finished the Amos.
I took all their masks.
Wait, what? Okay, take two later. Okay, so we finished the talk. How did it go?
It was really, really good.
Inspiring.
You did a great job.
Thank
I
you.
love all the quotes. I love the ending.
I love quotes.
We started at the beginning by asking them the advice on new artists and how they should
It
start.
felt like we were at a Brown and Proud
great.
Press event.
Okay.
Memories for the vlog.